It is a sad story. Sudan used to be looked at the land of opportunities, the land of mighty people.
The Arab don't respect us. The Arab don't give us our right. The Arab don't give us our dignity. They don't see us as people.
I feel very sad. I think we have arrived to a very dangerous point where we should, or we have to divide our country.
Most of the people are working for separation, that they have to separate from the north. Enough is enough.
سوق ضخم جدا كان بغذي السودان كله. كل السودان بيجي يشتري من ام درمان هنا. السوق هنا يعني قديم جدا وكان مقسم لمهن. المهن دي الحدادين، السمكريه، النجارين، السياق، كل المهن يعني.
The Tabibi family has been crafting precious metals in northern Sudan for over 500 years.
ما بس السودان هو في الشمال بس، لكن في كل العناصر لو طلعت لشرق السودان حتلقى في حضارة وفي تاريخ وفي ناس صنعت حضارة. لو مشيت جنوب السودان برضو بنفس القدر. طبعا ظروف الحرب هي اللي خلت الوضع كما هو عليه الآن.
لأنه هنا بقى السودان ما إثنية واحدة ولا دين واحد ولا نوع واحد من البشر، مش أمة واحدة. نحن أمم كثيرة في السودان. المسلم مسلم، المسيحي مسيحي، ما في حاجة.
Like the Tabibis, the Sudanese have a reputation for friendliness and tolerance. But the country's constitution, based on a localized interpretation of Sharia law, is less tolerant. It redefines the role of religion and politics, and the chief author of the Sudanese version of what they call political Islam is Hassan al-Turabi. He first came to prominence as a student leader coordinating street protests, which led to the overthrow of the Aboud military government in 1964.
And from the university, we staged a revolution, a popular uprising, and the army later on joined the people. Oh, every general strike, everyone is in the street.
Civilian government lasted just 5 years before being replaced in another military coup, which brought the left-wing Colonel Jafar Numeri to power. Turabi was imprisoned and then sent into exile. Over the years that followed, Numeri swung from initially being aligned to the communists through Arab nationalism to Pan-Africanism, and finally in the late 1970s, sensing a mood change in the country, he began to embrace political Islam.
When he saw that the Islamic fundamentalists were a political factor, he changed into Islamic fundamentalism. He was that sort of man.
Numeri played the populist card by turning strongly towards political Islam.
Oh yes, he did. And he was of course very jealous of us. He did not want Islam to be related to us, because we were the only ones who were championing the cause of Islam.
Numeri invited Turabi back to Khartoum and appointed him to the powerful post of Attorney General. They then set about dismantling the Addis Ababa Agreement, which had granted the South autonomy. It was at this point that John Garang, a protege of Joseph Lagu from the Anyanya days, and now a senior officer in the Sudanese armed forces, began plotting a southern rebellion. In May 1983, in Garang's hometown of Bor, soldiers mutinied, refusing to obey orders from their northern commanders. Numeri sent troops to crush the revolt. It was the opportunity Garang had been waiting for.
Numeri foolishly ordered the attack of Bor garrison, despite my personal warning that if you light fire, it will spread like bushfire and you will not be able to quench it. Leave those people alone.
In the face of attack from a large force of northern Sudanese, Garang joined the mutineers and led them into the bush to start a guerrilla movement. These are some of the survivors that left Bor to form the Sudan People's Liberation Army, the SPLA. Although the first few months of the SPLA were marked by infighting amongst its leaders, a decision taken in Khartoum would soon unite the warring factions.
Torabi played with the minds of the foolish military rulers. He made them to do for him what he could not do alone.
In September 1983, with Torabi at its core, the Numeri regime introduced a strict interpretation of Sharia law, which included punishments of limb amputation for crimes such as theft, stoning to death of women for adultery, and a ban on alcohol consumption.
Do you accept that the introduction of the September laws struck fear through the South?
I think it was only used as propaganda and struck fear thereafter. But it wasn't actually application because bars were open all the time in Juba. Those days, I'm quite sure about that. When I went to Juba myself with Joseph Lago. And, but security people sometimes, if they think you are subverting a public order for any reason, they might, they might be as zealous Islamically oriented, like the Salafis, like the jihadists, all over the world.
When Numeri declared the Islamic Sharia, Torabi said, what would have taken us 100 years to achieve, he did it by stroke of the pen.
Even among northern Muslims, there was anger, particularly at what they saw as Torabi's manipulation of the fundamentals of Islam.
الترابي كان مستشار رئيس الجمهورية فعن استثناء الغير المسلمين من قوانين سبتمبر فالترابي رفض لأنه قال دي بتبقى حجة إنه بعدين يدخلوا بها لمداخل أخرى حتى هو طبق الحدود فقط حدود الشريعة الإسلامية ما طبق الشريعة الإسلامية بفهم
فما كان المفروض يكون في قوانين بالفهم ده كده هي اللي لخبطت الموضوع كله.
The September laws would turn what was a small rebellion occurring in the south into a full-scale civil war lasting over 2 decades.
It immediately pitted the country against each other. And it is what made the people of southern Sudan swell the ranks of the SPLM.
The border town of Malakal witnessed some of the worst fighting.
It was terrible. People lie under the beds when you hear the sounds of the heavy artillery. Nobody moves on the road, even in the house, nobody moves around. You just lie down under the beds. People are just frightened. Even when people live there under the bed, you are shaking, one is shivering. Death can come at any time. Yes, some people died. Even near in front of my house also there were some people who were shot. Then they lay there for 2 or 3 days. Nobody to touch them. At that time then you cannot walk. You just stay in your place. Until all at the time when the dead bodies are collected, and then you see some police walking on the road, then that will be the time that you can come out.
300 kilometers northwest of Malakal lie the Nuba Mountains. The people here are a mixture of Christians, Muslims, and traditional African religions. The war affected them all.
رجال ونسوان وحتى مواطنين ديل كلهم الناس ديل ماتوا.
هاي كانوا أمين شهرين حامل وقام جا قتلوه طوالي يلا قمنا مشينا طوالي.
واحد كده رفعني قال لي قوم وانا شحت الناس قتلوا قدامي يعني يومك كان ما تم يعني ما تموت.
Hope of an end to conflict came in 1985. A general strike and mounting public anger led to President Dumeri being overthrown while on a visit to the United States. Military rule was eventually replaced by a coalition civilian government headed by Sadiq al-Mahdi. But it wouldn't be long before rumors of yet another coup emerged.
I thought that a country with civil war, a country with conflict all over, a country with tension with its neighbors, no one would want to step into this hell.
He had reckoned without the ambition of Brigadier Omar al-Bashir. In September 1989, just as al-Mahdi was about to clinch an historic peace agreement with the SPLA, the military made their move.
The idea was that we'll meet on the 18th of September to clinch this. And one of the reasons for the coup was that they thought this was a conspiracy against Islam.
Unknown to al-Mahdi, it was his own brother-in-law Hassan al-Turabi who was behind the coup.
It was our soldiers, actually. And most of the people dressed were not even soldiers at first. But later on, we allowed a few officers to take over.
So you controlled it?
We controlled it.
In the days leading up to the coup, Joseph Lagu received a warning to get out of the country. This former rebel leader was tipped off that the democratically elected government of al-Mahdi was about to be overthrown.
I was tipped by Turabi that there was going to be problem and that I should get away from the Sudan.
Turabi gave you advance notice,
yes,
effectively,
yeah,
of a coup d'etat,
yeah,
and you did nothing about it.
Hmm?
You did nothing about it.
What can I do about it?
Make it public.
Why should I make it public? Why should I make it public? He gave me a hint. He says something is going to happen. Better get away.
As for Turabi's brother-in-law, Prime Minister Sadiq al-Mahdi, there was no warning.
What did your brother-in-law say to you?
Unfortunately, he was on very bad terms with me. He thought I was just taking power from him. And those days I was still I was not in office necessarily, but he knew that it's our movement, and I am the leader of that movement.
In the south, John Garang soon faced a rebellion of his own when the SPLA leadership split along tribal lines.
The movement was split into two, and then they launched an all-out war in Bor area, home of Dr. John, of course, possibly trying to strip him of his support.
Garang was from the Dinka tribe, and most of the attackers came from a rival tribe, the Nuer.
They abducted also a number of children and girls and women. There was a massacring of people. Thousands of people died, and it was a total destruction, and the whole area was left deserted, a no man's area. So it was a very terrible situation.
Bishop Samuel Garang and local chief Enoch Deng raced to the town when they heard the news. It took 13 days for the bishop to find his own family.
I found the people down, those dead people, on the road, everywhere. And then I reach up for my children. Thank God I went and I found them in the bush with their mother. And little food which was with them. There was water and their food. They spent 13 days.
The current vice president of southern Sudan has been accused of orchestrating the Boer attacks to destabilize John Garang. An accusation he denies.
In the midst of confusion, people died.
Actually, it's fair to say that most of the attackers were from the Nuer tribe, your tribe.
Yes.
Were you involved in instigating this in any way at all?
I would have no reason to instigate.
Garang now had to fight a civil war within the SPLA and continue to battle the Northern Army. President Bashir, on the other hand, experienced a golden period as the 20th century came to a close. Oil had been discovered in the border regions, boosting the Sudanese economy. Khartoum began to transform itself into a modern metropolis, and his popularity soared. But as Bashir's star rose, Hassan al-Turabi's influence declined, and soon he became a marginalized figure on the political wings. The discovery of oil has brought its own problems, because 80% of the reserves are in the south, and the pipeline goes north. And in the oil-rich region of Abyei, there's a dangerous territorial dispute that could explode at any moment.
يوم الصيف يجي نجي نخليه خلا هي بنقول ده حقنا نحن ذو السيارة ماشيين كي وماشيين كي لكن سكن ما عندنا.
These are the Miseria, a nomadic tribe of Arab origin. For at least 300 years during the dry season, they have left their grazing lands in the north to travel southwards to the place they call the Sea of Arabs. On their way, they must pass through the Abyei region, inhabited by the mainly Christian Dinka Nok tribe. Time and again, the region has been devastated by fighting, which the local population claims is the work of Miseria militias, armed by the government.
I have seen the whole area was burned down. Even those buildings you are seeing, they have just been rebuilt. They were not there. The whole thing has got destroyed at all. And people move towards South Abyei.
But the Miseria chief denies that his people are responsible.
To turn over the picture that the Miseria are bad people, the Miseria are hostile, the Miseria are very violent. Yes, yes, we are not like this. I confirm to you that till this moment, we want to live in coexistence and peace with our brothers Ngok. Till this moment, yes.
After intense negotiations, in 2005, President Omar al-Bashir and SPLM leader John Garang brought 22 years of civil war to an end by signing the historic Comprehensive Peace Agreement at a ceremony in Naivasha in neighboring Kenya. Two key articles of the agreement were for a referendum to be held throughout southern Sudan on independence, and a simultaneous referendum in Abyei, where the population would be allowed to vote on whether to be in the north or the south. There's little doubt that Dinka Nok favor the south.
This is something that will be decided by the people, because right to self-determination is people's right. So it is the people of Abyei who are going to determine what course of action to take. thereafter.
But the Abyei ballot was abandoned amid protests that the rights of the Miseria, who had no vote, were being ignored.
I think Abyei was the mistake committed by the government negotiators in the Naivasha process. The Abyei region belongs to both the Miseria and Dinka. According to the SPLM, it's only the Dinka, which in my view is a racist. These people have depended on their cattle for hundreds of years. You need water, not oil, for your cattle to drink.
The Miseria drinks water, but the government drinks oil. You know? Even if they hide it, we know what they are after.
Failure to find agreement between the Dinka and the Miseria could provide the spark for an all-out war.
If Dinka say that they will not permit the Miseria to reach the waters, I tell you, we will fight them. We will fight them. We will fight them. And we will go through, even beyond Abyei, to drink water and to take part.
In Omar El-Fadli's restaurant in Khartoum, Darfurian performer Omar Essas sings of peace and unity in his troubled homeland. The United Nations says up to 300,000 people have died in Darfur, and 2.7 million have fled their homes. President Bashir, who puts the death toll at far fewer, just 10,000, has had an arrest warrant issued against him by the International Criminal Court on charges of war crimes. It's all a far cry from those heady days in 2005, when he and John Garang had joined together in peace. In the Nuba Mountains near the border between North and South, they still sing of that historic moment. But in a mausoleum in Juba, southern Sudan, lie the remains of John Garang, killed in a helicopter crash just 6 months after signing the peace agreement, and 3 weeks after over 1 million people had welcomed him to Khartoum.
Garang came with the idea that the Sudan should remain united. And he believed in that. Till he died, he believed in that. And he looked at the Sudan as a country, you know, that has a role to play. It is a linchpin of the whole continent.
Even his enemies knew that here was a man who had attempted to cross the divide that was Sudan.
He was a true leader. He inspired people around him. He was a towering figure. And I could see that even from my position on the other camp, because he was always an enemy. But no one could miss his leadership character and his abilities.
It was a great loss. Not for the SPLM, not for the South, but for the Sudan and for Africa.
Sudan was the giant of Africa, a great experiment to discover whether different religions and cultures could coexist together. Instead, it has become the land of broken dreams.